Defence Secretary Ben Wallace is with us from Brussels. Mr. Wallace, good morning. Thought on the inflation figure, first of all, please. Good morning.
Well, good morning, Kay, and welcome back from your trips. Look, I think look, it's the right direction. It's positive. I think it shows that the government's efforts, alongside others, to try and make sure that we deal with inflation, because inflation is really the number one enemy to the economy, is in the right direction. But we've got a long way to go. We'll have to keep working on it. I think, as your commentator said, the Bank of England's target is 2%, and we're at 10%, and no one likes to be living in a place of high inflation. But I really welcome the direction of travel, and we must keep working at it.
OK, let's talk about money, should we? An uphill battle with the Treasury. How much money do you need just to stand still?
OK, I've been in this game long enough. I think been a minister for God knows how many years, but it's always an uphill battle with the Treasury, no matter what department you're in. It's the right thing that a Secretary of State will argue for an increase to meet their priorities. And of course, between now and the budget, I've got lots of time and lots of meetings with the Chancellor to make sure that we try and come to a deal on it. And I think, I haven't hidden the fact that we suffer from inflation pressures, as does departments with big capital spending. That's spending on hardware and infrastructure, because, of course, that's where inflation goes to. But, we'll see. I'm not going to conduct the negotiations in public, but obviously we're going to try and make our way through this so that between now and the next spending review, which is in 2 years' time, we can insulate defence from many of those pressures.
So you're looking, according to the Times, for between 8 and 11 billion?
I've seen lots of reports of how much I'm looking for. As I said, Kay, I'm not going to conduct negotiations with the Treasury in public. I think we've got plenty of time. I'm very much conscious of the overall government's ambition, which is to drive down inflation, as I've just said earlier in the programme. That is key. That, of course, means it's going to pinch all of us in all our departments, because ultimately the answer cannot therefore be to flood everything with extra spending or more borrowing. But I also know that we have a growing threat on the world stage, and that's why I'll obviously negotiate with the Treasury about where we can get to cover the next 2 years before we get to the next comprehensive spending review.
So are you going to roll over then, or is it an issue of resignation if you don't get what you want?
No, let's just go to the budget, Kay. I think first and foremost, the most important thing is that I present a good case to the Chancellor, a good case to the Prime Minister, and of course the Prime Minister and Chancellor together will discuss how we can get overall within the spending envelope. That's the spending review. We need to indicate to the markets that we're not going to sort of just break our own fiscal disciplines, and then we'll see what I get at the end. But this is not about resigning or anything else. It's about delivering defence to meet the threat. That's my duty to the public, no matter what political party I am or anyone else. My successors will be the same, is to be able to fund defence to protect us from the likes of Russia and other countries around the world.
So suggestions in the papers that you'd resign if you didn't get what you wanted are tosh?
I don't know where that comes from. But Kay, at this moment, I have to tell you, there's an awful lot of speculation in the newspapers. Most of it seems to be untrue. OK.
When are we sending fighter jets to Ukraine?
Well, at the moment, I've been quite clear with that, is first and foremost what we're focusing on is delivering for Ukraine the effects that they need, which is either the ability to strike in the deep, that's at longer range, and that's why things like the M270 or the HIMARS are in, and indeed the use of UAVs that can drop munitions is another way of delivering that effect. The other one is the effect of anti-air that is required, which a fighter can deliver, but also surface-to-air missiles, which is why the international community has donated now thousands of anti-air missiles. I think the first point is the effect. In the long term, what we've got to do is help Ukraine's resilience, potentially post-conflict, to make sure that they can defend themselves in their skies. And that's why training people to fly fighter jets is an important step in that direction. But, the key here is that these are fighter jets. These are not handheld anti-tank weapons. These are aircraft that take not only months to train on, but also aircraft that require effectively a very substantial pit crew to support it. If you think about, it's very different gifting a sort of normal car that you and I might drive around with and a Formula One car. If you gift a Formula One car, it comes with a pit crew. It needs the crew to start it. It needs the crew to service it. It is a long tail that goes with a fighter aircraft. And I think, we can help Ukraine sooner by delivering the effects they need on the battlefield rather than the platform-specific request.
Can't give them enough ammunition, though, can we?
I think we're giving them lots of ammunition, and we continue to do so. If you look at the amount of the international community has donated, we're talking tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of rounds of ammunition. Munitions. We continue to put in £2.3 billion worth of support within this financial year, and another 2.3 billion next year. And we are actually putting in a huge amount, Kay. The questions that we will be making sure we help with is getting it delivered, getting it across the border. Remember, we can't fly in this equipment because of Russia's efforts to shoot down anything that would be flying, and we bring them in, obviously, across border. And we make sure we get it to them in the front line. And you know, look, the Ukrainians are doing a fantastic job, and under very difficult circumstances. The latest sort of Russian effort around a mining town, Valula, produced sadly, but nevertheless necessarily, the Ukrainian fight made sure that literally a brigade of Russians was wiped out over the last week. That's nearly over 1,000 men killed because of poor Russian equipment and poor Russian strategy.
Are China hacking our CCTV cameras?
Well, they're not. Hopefully, I don't think they are hacking our sensitive CCTV cameras. And you know, we take every effort to protect areas that are sensitive from anybody hacking it, whether it's China or whether it is another nation. And there are two parts, Kay, to protecting our infrastructure. One is to make sure that the quality of the equipment we buy is protected from being hacked. And that doesn't really matter who makes it. It's making sure that if we buy sort of cheap knockoffs, you're going to be in a position where you're going to be more vulnerable. And whether you're buying for your home equipment or whether you're buying for a government organization or a local council or a business, you should always make sure you're buying good quality as a way to protect yourself. And then the second one is, as you point out, whether or not we think there are particularly vulnerabilities in products sourced from certain countries such as China. And you'll remember the Huawei debate where the government took a decision that it would rid its sensitive networks of anything to do with Huawei. And that's the direction of travel we're going in.
Are we doing enough to help the people in the earthquake zone in southeastern Turkey and northwestern Syria? The British public raised £65 million in 4 days. Doing the maths, it looks as though the government has given maybe about £11 million worth of aid so far. Is there more coming?
Well, first of all, Kay, there's aid in cash and there's aid in kind. You know, I've deployed a Roll 2 hospital, which I think is going to be set up from today. I've deployed a C-130 Hercules with a critical care crew that can move casualties around Turkey. We've provided lots of transport, A400 aircraft, to move in both humanitarian aid and other aid. And I'm here in NATO today, where the Secretary General has asked me if there's any more airlift I can provide to help NATO supplies go in of humanitarian aid, and we're going to do that. So in kind, I think we've provided and will continue to provide an awful lot in value. I almost daily speak to or I'm in text engagement or indeed communicate with my Turkish counterpart, Minister Akar. Only the day before yesterday, I offered him troops if he needed it to help in that humanitarian effort. And for now, we are in the hands of the Turkish authorities and the United Nations in Syria. If they request more, we are very, very open to looking at that.
OK, let's just finish briefly where we started. The Treasury thinks the MOD wastes money. Do you?
Well, I think the Treasury will make that point as I asked for more money. Look, historically, the MOD has bought into equipment that I think hasn't necessarily delivered. But remember, 85% of our procurements are on budget, on time. Some of the major projects, they span 20 years. And in that time, threat changes, technology changes, and inflation changes. And of course, that often leads to very difficult conversations about either how many units we can buy in the end or indeed cost control. But it can be better. You'll be glad to know that since I became Defence Secretary, we've delivered a balanced budget for 2 years and heading towards 3. That's the first, I think, almost since the war that we've managed to get those results consistently. But, I'm fixing projects that were commissioned as far back as the Labour government. The Ajax vehicle, which is often quoted, was commissioned in March 2010 and has been a troubled programme. And we're now in a place where I think it's back on track. It's passed its first level of trials and we're into its next set. So, I think you can't hold the sins of my forefathers against me. I'm determined to make sure we change those practices. But that doesn't also change the fact that threat is growing. And what we've seen since 1991, since the end of the Cold War, is a consistent, effectively, raiding of the defence budget over time. And maybe a peace dividend was appropriate straight after the Cold War. We had huge armies in Europe. The Cold War finished, and it was right that the taxpayer who'd invested in defence got a return on that. The problem is that continued and has continued to far too many decades as the threat has increased. And I've been very open here that the threat has increased, and just like other parts of government, when demand threat increases, we should reconsider how much we fund it, which is why Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak, when he was Chancellor, gave us £16 billion extra back in 2020. It was the first real turning of the corner with real money, rather than sort of fantasy efficiency saving, the things that were supposedly the way they used to fund that sort of increase. And that has allowed us to start modernising our armed forces, which has been desperately needed, but genuinely start to modernise our armed forces.
OK. Hopefully Jeremy Hunt was listening to you. Good to talk to you as always. Safe journey back home. Thank you.